At this time, I'd like to begin our program by introducing a very special guest, the Honorable Lisa Bartlett. Supervisor Bartlett began her notable career in public service on the Dana Point City Council in 2006. This opportunity led to her serving as both mayor and mayor pro tem for the city. In 2014, Supervisor Bartlett was elected to the Orange County Board of Supervisors and re-elected in 2018. She was unanimously elected by her board colleagues to serve as chairwoman of the Board of Supervisors for 2019. In addition to her role on the Orange County Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Bartlett represents her constituents on 14 regional and state boards and commissions. She is currently on the board of directors for Orange County Transportation Authority, on the board of directors for Orange County Fire Authority, Transportation Corridor Agency, South Coast Air Quality Management District, and numerous other boards and commissions, if you can imagine that. She is also serving as president of the California State Association of Counties. Please welcome Supervisor Lisa Bartlett.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here today. I know we're going to try to get through this in 20 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A session afterwards. But I just want to thank everyone for attending, and I'm going to be providing a quick 2019 county recap, and then what's ahead in 2020, what we can expect. And as I've stated before, I just want to reiterate that Orange County is one amazing county. When you consider all the things that we do on a day-to-day basis, all the accomplishments we've had over the years, it's really quite incredible. Orange County is a key leader in strategic thinking, delivering on a lot of key initiatives. We've got a wonderful weather, 42 miles of pristine coastline, and in the not-too-distant future, we're going to have a newly renovated harbor, enhancements at John Wayne Airport, and much more that I'll be speaking about today. So just a quick refresher on some of the county facts. Population is about 3.2 million people in less than 800 square miles. So to give you some perspective, Riverside, San Bernardino, kind of equivalent population, they've got 7,000 square miles in their county. So we're quite compact. Orange County is the 6th largest county in the nation, bigger than about 22 states. 3rd largest county by population of the 58 counties in California. And we've got an annual budget of about $6.2 billion. Sounds like a lot, but it goes very quickly, trust me. In the next 20 years, our county's population is expected to grow by another 500,000 people. The county is governed by a 5-member board of supervisors, each representing the 5 county districts. So as supervisor for the 5th district, I represent the 11 South Orange County cities plus the unincorporated areas, about 630,000 South County residents. The goal is to always ensure that we have the health, safety, and well-being of all Orange County residents so that we can continue to enjoy the excellent quality of life for many years to come. As a board, we're responsible for providing services, public safety, parks and recreation, transportation infrastructure, and to administer both at the state and federal level and resources. There are over 18,000 county employees in 24 departments, and as a supervisor, I think people know I always strive for accountability, transparency, efficiency in government, and always policy over politics, which is not always easy, but it's so, so important. When I look at other counties around the state, we all face similar challenges. Homelessness, which in a recent poll was by far the #1 issue statewide. Housing and land use, there's a lack of affordable housing throughout the entire state. Health and Human Services, there's a tangent to homelessness, including mental and behavioral health. Transportation, the need for greater regional mobility. And infrastructure. A lot of counties have very old infrastructure. So for instance, in our county, County Civic Center is old, and we have a lot of old buildings that we house some of our employees in. So we're going to have to, over time, either move to different areas, or in our Civic Center, we're rebuilding our entire Civic Center building by building. And then, of course, with public safety, you've got that tangent also to homelessness and the increasing cost of public safety. How do we contain the public safety costs? In my district, all but one city is a contract city with the Sheriff's Department, and they by far provide the best service possible for the price. The per capita cost is a little over $200, so it's very cost effective, but it's still very expensive. It takes up about 50% of most of the city's budgets, so we have to figure out long-term what can we do on a regional basis. So I'll touch on some of those issues and focus on some accomplishments of 2019 and what we can look forward to in 2020. One theme that you'll notice through each of these accomplishments will be that partnerships have been created by the county in connecting local government to the businesses and stakeholders that make up our communities. So 2019 accomplishments. One major accomplishment the county has been truly focused on this past year is to create a better mental and behavioral health treatment and resources. And last January, the Board of Supervisors committed $16.6 million for the Be Well OC public-private partnership. It's a $40 million project, and we worked on a P3 basis because county government can't solve everything, and bringing in additional stakeholders, not only financially, but to participate, will make a tremendous difference. And this is setting a standard nationwide, where we've got other counties across the nation that are coming out to California, coming to Orange County to see what we're doing so they can replicate it in their county. So it's the first of its kind in the state of California, and it leverages best-in-class capabilities, public, private, academic, faith-based entities, and others to create a truly coordinated system of care to solve the pervasive mental health care challenge. Currently, more than 100 organizations will play a role in the Be Well ecosystem. We recently broke ground on the first of hopefully three Be Well OC mental health treatment centers, and the first one will be in the city of Orange. We hope to have one in North County, Central County, and one in South County. The 60,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility is set for completion in the fall of 2020. It will offer the best-in-class mental health and substance use disorder treatment programs that will be available to all residents, regardless of a person's ability to pay. So whether you've got the best PPO insurance or you're homeless on the street, you're going to be able to get served by this facility. Service elements will include triage, psychiatric intake and referral, SUD intake and referral, withdrawal management, transitional residential treatment, and an integrated support center. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for mental and behavioral health. This is just one example of how government, healthcare providers, and our private stakeholders can come together to make a difference that will benefit the entire community. Now, moving on to our airport. We have two great county assets, John Wayne Airport and Dana Point Harbor. So at the airport, we're establishing new partnerships that will put a major focus on the local culture and make traveling through the airport more convenient and improve the experience for everyone. We do have an award-winning airport. Money Magazine and J.D. Powers named it Best Large Airport of the Year 2 years in a row. So we have to maintain some very high standards. John Wayne Airport has a high number of great enhancements coming, and that will increase the guest experience. It's all about superior customer service and continuing with that high-level experience. The first major improvement is the new interactive digital wayfinding signage, which is aimed at making air travel more convenient. The state-of-the-art and easy-to-use touchscreens help our guests locate specific restaurants, retail concession, and amenities throughout the terminal. One of my favorite parts about the new digital wayfinding transition has been the incorporation of the mobile food orders, which are so convenient for the traveling public. We want to make everything easy at John Wayne Airport. So through the new system, you can view menus, you can order items, and you can pick it up at the restaurant. You can even have it delivered right to the gate. So many times you're rushing through the airport, you finally get your kids seated, and you're there at the gate, and they say, we're hungry. You don't want to lose your seats there waiting for your flight. You can now order right there and have your meals delivered to you. So that's just another way we're making some significant improvements at the airport. We've developed a 4-phase plan to bring new and exciting local food and beverage options to John Wayne Airport. The county just completed the first phase of a new concession development program, which will bring in a slate of new local concepts to John Wayne Airport. A couple of meetings ago at the Board of Supervisors, we approved some of the new restaurants that are coming in. So you'll see Greenleaf and Coffee Bean Tea and Leaf, Taps Fish House, and Brodard, just to name a few. So some of our local concepts that you've enjoyed throughout Orange County now have an opportunity to really thrive at John Wayne Airport. And it's a good thing because they're going to be able to market themselves at the airport and also their brick and mortar locations. So again, boosting the local economy in Orange County. We are looking forward to approving phase 2 of the plan in the upcoming week, so stay tuned. We've got 4 phases and we're moving into phase 2. It's a lot of good changes at the airport. Now moving on to transportation. One of the main issues that I've always been an advocate for is improving regional mobility. You know, we've got 3.2 million people and 800 square miles, and in my district we have one freeway. So in other parts of the county you've got the 22 and the 55 and the 57 and everything else. We've got I-5, and that's basically it. So in looking at improving infrastructure, that's something that's really top of mind, especially in my district. Transportation infrastructure has the potential to increase public safety, save time on the road, and achieve a higher quality of life. With the retention of SB1, the county will have the necessary resources to invest in our roads. With M2, OCTA is putting those dollars to good use throughout the county with some really significant projects that will have a very positive impact on mobility. Having invested in the upkeep of our roads, we'll have an opportunity to invest in new capital projects for the county. Likewise, the County Board of Supervisors are engaged at the Orange County Transportation Authority, or OCTA, and the Transportation Corridor Agencies, or TCA. One major South County project that is through OCTA is the South County I-5 revitalization project that I'm really excited about. This includes construction and improvements to Oso Parkway, to Alicia Parkway in La Paz. So those interchanges will be completely redone, and it's currently under construction. The SR 73 to Oso Parkway and Avery Parkway interchange, and the Alicia Parkway to El Toro Road, which has completed the final design, and final review and construction and contract packaging is currently underway. The OCTA board has also begun the implementation of the 2019 call for projects for the Regional Signal Synchronization Program, because if you can synchronize signals appropriately, you're going to get people moving through the arterials at a much better pace, getting onto the freeways. So one of the new boards that I've stepped onto is the South Coast Air Quality Management District. I have always strived to take a balanced approach to policy making and to do work necessary and dive in to really understand issues before voicing support or opposition to any particular action. Sometimes the impacts of those decisions are small, but at other times the reach of the impacts is rather expansive. So a prime example of the impacts created can be seen by looking at the Air Quality Management District, which I'm a new governing board member for the Southern region. The South Coast Air Quality Management District is the pollution control agency for all of Orange County and the urban portion of LA, Riverside, and San Bernardino. The district covers about 10,743 square miles and 16.8 million people, which is about half the population of the state and the second most populated urban area in the country. AQMD likes to say to new members that it's like drinking from a fire hose when you get initiated, simply due to the breadth of what they do, and they really aren't kidding. When they cover the areas of air quality, they're very far-reaching, and we have a lot of substantive things on each one of our agendas that require a lot of technical work and keeps my policy advisor, James, very busy for those meetings. Well, I've only served on AQMD for almost a year. My entire tenure, I've pushed for a balanced approach to policymaking that takes input from industry, the business community, as well as the residents and the community all into consideration. And it's really important to have that balanced approach because when you talk about putting in rules and regulations, they have the ability to do so. But it has an impact on the local economy, on businesses, on the trades, et cetera. So you have to take that balanced approach to make sure that we don't just improve air quality at the cost of everything else. One of the most recent actions that I championed on a balanced approach on the AQMD board is related to the modified hydrogen fluoride, or MHF, in the refineries. And this was a really big deal. Within the refineries, there are two primary types of alkylation methods, sulfuric and HF. And here in Southern California, both are currently utilized. There has been a longstanding push by the community through AQMD rulemaking to ban the use of HF. If that were to happen, it would have a negative impact on the supply of gasoline. Prices would go up. And given the potential cost to transition to other methodologies, would likely cause facilities to close, thereby a lot of job loss and an overall bad situation. So we were able to take a balanced approach, and we've got the refineries basically putting in some additional safety guards in place, and working with the AQMD staff and working with the board members, we're able to take, I think, a much better approach to things. So I'm happy with the outcome there. There's still the AQMD district tax that is still being proposed by the AQMD staff, and it's got an amendment now in Sacramento. But I think there are other options for increasing revenue to get to more cost recovery on a lot of the programs that we have. We're not nearly at cost recovery on a lot of AQMD programs. And we can increase revenue without more taxes. So that's something that I'm going to be really focusing on this coming year as those amendments come through on the proposed legislation. So now touching on homelessness. All of these accomplishments on mental health, transportation, and the environment are sometimes overshadowed by the pressing and difficult issue of homelessness. As many of you in the room know, homelessness has been a growing issue throughout our entire state. In fact, I was recently at a CSAC meeting where it was discussed that homelessness was the #1 issue of 57 of 58 counties in the state. One of the county's top issues, well, it was a small rural county, actually, and Moose was their #1 issue. But homelessness is their #2 issue. So back in April, we released our county point-in-time count, and we've got about 6,800 homeless that were counted that were experiencing homelessness, including 212 veterans and 422 seniors. Luckily, the state knows this is a shared responsibility and has dedicated $640 million in funding to help cities, counties build housing and provide wraparound services, specifically for the homeless population. The big 13 cities got the biggest chunk of money, $275 million. The counties are receiving $175 million. And the regionals, continuums of care, will be receiving about $100 million. And even though it sounds like a lot of money, it's a drop in the bucket for what we really need to address homelessness. We hope to use some of the funding towards county service programs and mental health care, job training, and housing placement assistance. In order to make an impact on the issue, we really need a collaborative effort from everyone, the counties, cities, key stakeholders, and all of the elected leaders like a lot of you in the room. Solving homelessness is truly a shared responsibility. Moving on to public-private partnerships. With my experience in the private sector, I'm always looking for ways to make our government more efficient, knowing there are some things that government does extremely well, and there are other things that the private sector does much better. So public-private partnerships are one of the most reliable tools at the County of Orange that we've been able to leverage for more community engagement, business involvement, and in many of our key countywide projects like the Dana Point Harbor Revitalization Project and what will be the new Laguna Niguel City Center project that I'm really excited about. Dana Point Harbor Revitalization. In October of 2018, after 20 years of discussion and debate, we officially signed the master lease agreement with the Dana Point Harbor partners, finally allowing the long-awaited project to move forward. This was to be a county project, and when I got elected, it was one of my first things to move forward. And I said, how are we going to pay for a $350 million project from the county? So I'm not a fan of taxes or bonds, and I said, we should engage the private sector. The county we don't have the core competency and the skill set to build boat docks and a lot of other things that are going to be in this harbor project. And so I met with our public works staff, and they also wanted to increase the amount of staff for the project by 35%. And I said, we've already got 18,000 employees at the county. We don't need any more. So switching gears, I said, we're going to do a public-private partnership. And I got a lot of moans and groans because the county really wanted to build out this project. But we took about a year. I got a lot of things cleaned up in the harbor that needed to be done during that year, sent it out to RFP, and awarded the contract to the Dana Point Harbor Partners. They take the financial risk for the entire project, not one taxpayer dollar to build out the harbor. So this is a really good thing. And they have the expertise that the county doesn't have. They're best-in-class partners for the water side. You've got Joe Uberoff and Bellwether Financial. Waterside improvements they create throughout the entire world. They're going to take the best from Australia and New Zealand and all of their other waterside projects and bring those components into Dana Point Harbor. You've got Robert Olson, R.D. Olson and Company. They're going to build 2 new hotels, an affordable hotel and a boutique hotel. And you've got Burnham Ward on the commercial core. They build out SoCo and the OC Mix. So all of these great partners are going to build out a fantastic new Dana Point Harbor. So this project could not have become a reality without the county and this P3 partner team. And they're going to have improvements that will last for the long term. The harbor is very old, 50+ years. So once the harbor is complete, it'll be enjoyed by residents from across the county and from around the world because it is an international resort destination. So moving on to one of my favorite new projects that'll be moving forward, and I see Lane Genoway in the audience here from the city of Luganinagal. We have approved at the board the public-private partnership for the development of a new Luganinagal City Center, which is going to be really significant. The new City Center is going to revitalize an important part of the city and create a walkable environment for all to enjoy. The development plans were recently announced by the city on the land which is adjacent to the Luganinagal City Hall at Crown Valley Parkway and Alicia Parkway. This public-private partnership with the county and the Luganinagal Town Center partners will set an example of how we can all work together and expand our local economies and bring a welcome mix of housing, dining, and entertainment options for all to enjoy. The new city center will provide a food-focused destination for locals and foodies to find curated culinary delights. It will also feature outdoor spaces filled with family-friendly activities and programmed events, including farmers markets, live music, yoga, and movies in the planned open spaces. The P3 team is in the process of engaging the city officials and residents to collaborate on fine-tuning the much-anticipated project. So some of the 2020 goals, moving on next. I'm very proud to work with the County of Orange and the staff, and we've been able to accomplish so much this past year that I served as chairwoman. We have a great team at the county, 18,000 employees, 24 departments, and I can tell you, under the leadership of our CEO, Frank Kim, it is really a pleasure to work with staff members that are so dedicated to good government, efficient planning of things, and very collaborative throughout the year. We could not accomplish as a board what we've been able to accomplish without all of the great staff. So there are a lot of wonderful projects and initiatives that have been completed this past year, and I could talk for hours about everything that we've done. But I also want to take a look and have you take a look at what you'll be seeing in 2020. So in talking about CSAC, the California State Association of Counties, this is a really important organization. It provides leadership for all 58 counties in the state. And one of my top and regular responsibilities, I serve on not only CSAC, but 14 other boards and commissions, including, as mentioned, OCTA and AQMD, et cetera. It's down from about 22 boards. I've learned a lesson when I started as a supervisor. I'll volunteer for that. So the second year in office, I said, My colleagues have got to step up to the plate. You know, I can volunteer, but there's only so much time in a day, and I'm not going to take the burden of being on everything. So we've now got everything divided up, and I've been able to reduce that from 22 down to 14. So most recently, I was elected to serve as the president of California State Association of Counties. CSAC focuses on representing all 58 counties before the California legislature, administrative agencies, and the state and federal government. We advocate for all of our counties on a myriad of issues. We place a strong emphasis on educating everyone about the value and the need for county programs and services and the critical role counties play and why we need more funding. We always need more funding. It is a true honor to have been elected by my California County Supervisor peers for this position, as I will have greater access to our legislators, the governor and his staff, and a greater ability to advocate for the needs of our county and other counties across the state. Having a seat at the table is really a good thing for Orange County. And the presidency of CSAC, we rotate every year between an urban county, suburban county, and rural county. So it rotates in that order. But Orange County has not held the presidency at CSAC for over 70 years. I don't know what happened, but somehow Orange County got left out of the mix. So it's really great to be there in leadership and leading that great organization. Moving on to homelessness and funding. So CSAC has put a major focus on joining the governor in the fight to end homelessness. And I'm currently a member of the governor's homelessness task force and working hard with my local government peers and stakeholders to get some true reform and support to combat this issue. Just a few weeks ago, the governor announced that in his 2020 budget proposal, he's requesting $750 million for access to housing and services funding that will be administered through the State Department of Social Services, and that will help pay rent for individuals facing homelessness, provide support to regions, and to bring on more dwelling units, and to help stabilize board and care facilities and homes for folks. So we have a lot of things in the pipeline. The $750 million, of course, is a drop in the bucket, but we've really got to start somewhere. He also announced that they'll be looking into state properties, so stay tuned on this, state properties throughout California to house homeless and provide local resources and getting the local governments involved to develop, supplement, and augment housing projects. So this is something we're going to have to really just stay in tune on. Some things could be great and other things may be not so great. So you really want to keep on top of what's happening through the governor's office. This is all great news for the most part, and we welcome the assistance and collaboration of the state and our cities to combat the issue. So at the federal level, President Trump announced great streamlining and things on NEPA, which is wonderful. And we've also got CEQA in California, the California Environmental Quality Act. And if you've got something more stringent, you can use your more stringent approach for approvals on projects through the EIR process. So for a lot of states, they're going to be able to take streamlining NEPA and be off and running on projects. And in California, we can utilize our CEQA instead of the NEPA on certain projects. But CEQA is so stringent, that's where we need streamlining. And we are pounding on the governor's desk and pounding on legislators to get CEQA streamlining because they want us to build out housing. They want us to build things here and build things there. And to get through the CEQA process in California, it is so arduous that it takes 7 to 10 years. And you get cost escalation and other bad things happen. So we need to get things online a lot faster, and that's going to be one of our major priorities, I think, from all of the counties, is to work on that CEQA streamlining. Looking towards the census and redistricting in 2021. We're now at the start of a new decade, which always brings more excitement and energy to individual lives and to our communities. A new decade also means another U.S. census will be conducted across the nation. The census is one of the most important federal processes we have because it determines how resources and representation will be distributed for the next 10 years. The census determines how much federal funding we will receive for things like Medicare, rental assistance, education, and so much more. Both the state and the county use these numbers to estimate our funding for all of our local programs as well. It also dictates the redistricting of our legislative districts and whether we need more or less legislators representing us in both the federal government and at the state level. So 2020 census, 2021 redistricting. So all of the boundaries are going to be changing for the supervisorial districts, the state assembly districts, the state senate districts, and all of our congressional districts. So it's extremely important that everyone be counted because that funding element is critical. Which is why the county has launched its own efforts, working with the U.S. Census team to educate and engage all populations so everyone is counted. We have a specific county census coordinator to work with our cities, the nonprofits, religious-based organizations, community programs, and all other groups who can ensure we get the most accurate count. This year will be the first year the initial count will be done online. So moving towards technology, whether it be the point-in-time count or the census count. Each household will get a postcard with information on how to fill out the official census form and be able to do that online with your basic household information. And trust me, if you don't comply and get the information in for the census, a census worker will actually become knocking at your door, so you don't want that to happen. Going to transportation and regional mobility, this is one of my top priorities. So one of the projects is the I-405 project, and this is the busiest corridor in the nation. It connects LA and Orange County. It's 16 miles, and the freeway is expected to grow on this corridor by about 35% by 2040, which is why the OCTA board implemented the design build of this project, which will be concluded in 2023. The 16-mile project will add one regular lane in each direction from Euclid Street to the I-605. In addition, OCTA will improve freeway entrances and exits and replace over 18 bridges. So the project will construct I-405 express lanes, which will have 2 lanes in each direction from the SR-73 to the I-605. And after the project is completed, it will not only be a quicker commute, but a more reliable transportation corridor. The implementation of the 405 express lanes will give drivers the option to drive through faster and reduce times for driving by about 30 minutes. By 2030, the I-405 will have more vehicles driving on it, but our major project will keep drivers moving and reduces congestion, thereby improving air quality, so AQMD should be happy. Another major project for 2020 will be the addition of the county's Los Patrones Parkway extension to the Master Plan of Arterial Highways, which would be an extension of the SR 241 from Cow Camp Road to La Pata on the San Clemente side of things. So stay tuned on how this project will be moving forward. TCA has the project in their scoping bubble. We've got a lot of stakeholders involved. Timing is critical. Cost is important. So we've got to figure out how we can move this project along as quickly as possible. But most importantly, this project is the county project. Will create a much-needed throughway without a toll. It's simply a continuation of the existing county road. And it takes 12,000 trips a day off of La Pata, and again enhances mobility. So between that project, the Ortega Widening Project, which is underway right now, and then hopefully the continuation of the HOV lane from Pico to the county line will really serve South County well for the future. So in conclusion, as you can see, the county is always working on a wide variety of issues and concerns on behalf of our 3.2 million residents. And I'm really proud of the work we've been able to accomplish in 2019 and very excited for what's in store in 2020. So at this time, I'm happy to take a few questions from the audience. So just raise your hand, don't be shy. Yes.
Up, so I hope you can hear me. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your comments. Would you please comment on homelessness being the main issue across the state and even in the nation, the governor's and the legislature's position on adopting policies and ordinances and laws that will supersede local governing boards such as the county and the city? I'm speaking specifically to coming in and through SB 5, I think it's SB 50, and some other issues that will supersede the local governing entities.
Okay, so as I stated before, homelessness is the #1 issue in California with all 58 of our counties. But what we also need to note is we have 50 states in our union. And California now has over 30% of the entire nation's homeless population. So when you think about that, that's huge. And it happens for a whole host of reasons. Domestic violence, lack of affordable housing, the good weather we have, the programs we have at the state level. So there's a whole host of reasons why, but we have a huge homeless population in our state, but we always advocate for local control. We don't want to be regulated by Sacramento. Or anything at the federal level. So that's why we have to stay on top of what's happening there with legislation, with regulations, taxes, etc. We want to be able to develop solutions at the local level. So I always advocate for all of our 34 cities and for the county, let's work together and come up with plans through the Housing Trust and through United Way's program to get rental assistance out to people and get them into permanent supportive housing. Let's work at the local level together so that we can solve the problem locally so we don't have to get that intrusion by the state or from the federal level. Okay, I guess that was our one question. So thank you. Thank you very much. I know we're out of time. But I hope to look forward to continuing to work with all of you. Would love to get your ideas and your input, your feedback on anything related to the county. You know, I've always got an open door policy. You know where to reach me. So don't hesitate to reach out. Would love to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Supervisor Bartlett, for that presentation. Today we are in for a double special treat. At this time, I would like to invite Joel Kotkin and Marshall Toplansky to the stage. Described by the New York Times as America's Uber geographer, Joel Kotkin is an internationally recognized authority on global, economic, political, and social trends. His work over the past decade has focused on inequality and class mobility, as well as how regions can address these pressing issues. Mr. Kotkin is the Presidential Fellow in Urban Futures at Chapman University in Orange, California, and Executive Director of the Houston-based Center for Opportunity Urbanism. Joel Kotkin. Marshall Toplansky, MBA, serves as a research fellow at the C. Larry Hogue Center for Real Estate and at the Center for Demographics and Policy. He is a clinical assistant professor of management science at the Argyros School of Business and Economics. Most recently, Marshall co-authored, along with Joel, the OC Focus, a multi-year research publication that has identified strategic directions for the growth of Orange County. Marshall holds an MBA from Harvard Business School and an undergraduate degree from SUNY Albany in political science and Chinese studies. Joel and Marshall will be providing us with a presentation on California feudalism. How do you deal with the middle class squeeze? Please welcome Joel and Marshall.
Thanks. Thank you. Right, well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We appreciate it. We hopefully have some interesting things for you. As many of you know, and as he just said, we started our research into looking at middle class issues by focusing on Orange County. So we, like many successful people in Orange County, you start at the county level and then you kind of move to broaden your focus to the state level. So we have been our sponsors for our research, and some of you are here, thank you very much for your support, have asked us to take a look at Orange County in the context of the broader world of California. So what we're going to present to you today, let's see whether this works. I think we're going to need to go manually with this, so the next slide, please. We're going to share with you kind of what we've done, where we are in our research, and kind of preview a little bit some of the findings that we've uncovered in terms of the squeeze in the middle class. So we have 5 research teams from Chapman University working on this project. We've conducted interviews all across the state and gotten input from business leaders, from education leaders, from just plain folks all around the state. We've asked business and government leaders to give us their perceptions as well, which has been very much appreciated. Our focus is to try to identify programs across the country, as well as across the state, that actually work at trying to fix the squeeze on the middle class. As we move through our presentation, we're going to give you a little more depth about what we are really talking about when we talk about squeeze of the middle class. We've updated the original economic data that we used when we presented to you guys last year about the state of the Orange County economy. So next slide. As we mentioned, there's a lot of headwinds to to the life for the middle class person in California and in Orange County. It's very nice to hear from Supervisor Bartlett about all the wonderful things that we're doing to make the food choices better at Orange County's airport and to make a really nice harbor upgrade at Dana Point. But we're living in a world where so few people in Orange County can actually afford to maintain their lives here, that it's really, really difficult. The planning assumption for the state, for the county, listening to the supervisor talk about it, is that we're going to have 500,000 more people in Orange County. All of the demographic data that we have been working with and the projections show that that is no way that we're going to do that. We are in fact shrinking as a county because people are leaving because it's too hard and too expensive to live here. So when you put that into the planning assumptions, a number of really interesting potential choices start to emerge about what it is that we need to do. We're seeing incredibly sharp decreases in the number of people who can afford to buy even the median priced home. And we're seeing people who are the people that we really should be keeping in Orange County, the seed corn, the 25 to 40-year-old people leaving Orange County, as well as the state in larger numbers. Next slide, please. So hit the next slide. So I know by the way, we may go a little long. So I just want to let you know that if you have to leave, of course, please leave. But I think we're going to go longer than what the program has allotted. Joel, let's talk about feudalism first and what we're talking about.
This is actually part of both the research we did in California, but actually a book that's coming out in May, which gets into this on a global level. I just want to get you to understand why we use the term feudalism. One, we're seeing all over the world, and here in Orange County and the rest of the U.S., a growing concentration of ownership of property. A lot of the property that we're finding even now, when there'll be something saying, well, this number of homes were bought. When we talk to the developers, they'll say, yeah, and most of them were investors who don't live here. That in other words, we're not getting, as Marshall mentioned, we're not getting young, upwardly mobile families buying large numbers of houses in California or Orange County. Our politics are dominated by a theology or an ideology. Supervisor Bartlett was talking about the AQMD, obviously, which can be interpreted all sorts of ways, but one of the things that we're concerned is that this ideology that now dominates the state, where they say people shouldn't drive. Okay, so we're going to only allow building in areas where people won't have to drive. Well, I can tell you there are two areas in the state, San Francisco and to some extent downtown LA. The rest of the state, really, you could actually make a case against any development. I was talking to an engineer in Riverside County the other day, and he was saying even things like synchronizing streetlights, as Supervisor Bartlett talked about, it definitely is better for the air pollution, but they say, well, it encourages people to drive. I mean, we have to understand, we're sort of like living in, the Middle Ages. It was like, would you expect that the College of Cardinals would have a debate over the divinity of Christ? I doubt it. That's where we are now. We are so driven by ideology that trying to say, well, does this actually work? That doesn't seem to be part of it. And I have to say the supervisor's got a work cut out for AQMD, because that's where a lot of the most extreme ideology comes from. Lack of upward mobility. This is probably the most important issue, is not so much inequality per se, but the fact that people do not perceive that they can do better. Just a little shocking example here. I have 36 kids in my class in interterm. So I asked, how many of you expect to stay in Orange County? 2 out of 36. And it's not like they don't like the weather or they don't like living in Orange County. They don't see a future for themselves. This is the seed corn that Marshall was talking about. The decline of the middle class will show you. The most important numbers you'll see today are not the housing numbers, which you've seen many times, but the kind of jobs that we're producing that are not jobs that are remotely able to generate the income to live in Orange County. We have obviously stagnation in many parts of California, and widespread poverty. California has the highest poverty rate and the fastest increase in inequality of any state in the union, and declining literacy. And then anybody here teaches besides us in this room? Well, I think you can back us up on declining literacy then. And people, like in the Middle Ages, after the Roman period, fewer and fewer people were able to read, and that's also a characteristic of feudalism.
Next slide. So let's take a look at the numbers, and let's start off with the issue of jobs, because that people will stay in a place if they have good paying jobs. Next slide. So we've assembled some data for you. First of all, this is a successful group. This is a relatively affluent and the success story of Orange County. How are we doing in creating high-paying jobs? So we defined high-paying jobs as jobs over $100,000 a year. We are actually creating them, and I'm sure you can read this if I gave you a microscope. We are actually creating them at a much lower rate than competitive areas in the country. That's not really a good thing. Right there, if you'll see that. 34.9%, this is 2008 to 2018. And what is the percent growth rate in jobs that you might want to have? $100,000 a year plus jobs. Next slide. We're also not doing a great job at building middle pay jobs, jobs between $40,000 and $100,000. Let me highlight the Orange County number there. We're at 15.1% growth, kind of consistent with other areas, except you can see that San Francisco and other areas, this is within the state, are doing a better job than we are for Orange County. Next. 2.5 times as many people in Orange County are paid under $40,000 a year as are paid over $100,000 a year.
Yeah, just one interesting statistic, 80% of the jobs created in the last decade in California paid below the median income, and about half of those under $40,000 a year.
Correct. And if looking forward, if you take the state's projections of job creation and do the math on it, you will find that about 75 to 80% of the jobs that are projected to be created in Orange County for the next, till 2026, will be paying $60,000 a year or less. Not really a great, and you can see those lines are widening, so that means the problem is getting worse. Next slide. So what that means is the things that keep people here, the ability to afford to live in Orange County, are kind of going away. They're slowly ebbing.
And particularly, as we'll show you, the groups that are hit are minorities, millennials, immigrants. Those, but particularly the focus on the millennial, our children, or who have really almost no chance of owning a house here.
Right. Well, and having a house is kind of a ticket to the American dream. So housing affordability is dampening the achievement of that. Next slide. You want to do this one, Joel?
Yeah, I mean, basically, in the rest of the country, actually, affordability has not declined very much in the rest of the country. But if you can say LA and Orange County, you're having an increase in in home prices that are almost more than twice the increase in wages. Inland Empire has the same situation. Inland Empire being sort of one of the last regions in California where upward mobility and middle-class lifestyles are still
semi-affordable.
Semi-affordable. Remember, the key thing to remember, and we'll get into this later, is that the reason that places like Orange County are getting so old is young people aren't coming in. And so those of us who were lucky enough to have been born at the right time and maybe bought our houses 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I bought my first house in LA 35 years ago. I can sort of make it and live still a decent life. If you're new and you don't have the money, you know, unless you rob the bank or have rich parents, you don't have much of a chance.
Next slide. This slide is particularly, hits me hard, which is, this is the percentage of households that can afford the median price home and how that's changed since the year 2000. We always think of California as kind of the middle class dream. Almost 60% there's 60% fewer households can afford to buy the median priced house in our area than they could 2,000 years ago. All of those numbers adjusted for inflation, of course. That's pretty amazing, right? What that really means is we're becoming a gentrifying area. We're becoming an area that appeals to the rich, but doesn't have the ability to sustain the middle class.
Or older people who got in when the going was good. By the way, I just want to point out the number for the rest of the U.S. is positive.
Right. So in the U.S. as a whole, more people can afford to buy the median priced home. Here, 60% fewer people can afford to buy the median priced home. Next slide. So, obviously, the impact when things get bad and things become unaffordable is people leave. Next slide.
This is very interesting. This is a recent poll done by Berkeley. As you can see, high housing costs, high taxes, biggest reason why people want to leave. The state political culture, you know, I can certainly understand that. Overcrowding is an issue. I mean, one of the mantras of the current regime in Sacramento is, oh, what we really need is to have a more densely populated. So in other words, let's turn Orange County into like LA County. I'm sure you're all anxious to see that happen. You're having moved here 5 years ago. Obviously, this isn't attractive. So people are leaving. You know, people aren't moving to Texas because of the weather and the topography, okay? They're moving to Texas because a combination of jobs that pay better and lower housing prices and lower taxes is luring them and sort of wiping out the enormous intrinsic advantages of living in California.
Next slide.
This is one of the most
released data, by the way.
Yeah, our demographer just did this. This is really interesting. California is going to lose a congressional seat for the first time in its history. If I hear one more speech by Garcetti or one of those other numbnuts well, we have to build all this housing because all the people are coming. And I'm saying, well, have you been to planet Earth recently? And obviously he hasn't. California, around 2015, 2016, even though the economy was doing reasonably well, started to decrease. Now, there is a national and even global phenomena, which I deal with in the book, about decreased population because it's also part of the feudal era. But we've been having a more precipitous drop than the rest of the country. And Southern California, and particularly LA County, have gone negative. So I don't know, who Garcetti is trying to congest everything for, but it's certainly not going to make life better. And then if we look at migration, again, you can see we finally passed New York in out migration. And that's been increasing at a fairly rapid rate. Got next slide?
Next slide, please.
You want to talk about the county numbers?
Yeah, so the county data has not been, for 2018, has not been released yet, so this is 2017. As you can see, the rate of outward migration from the county is increasing. In 2017, we lost almost 14,000 people. I expect that 2018 number is probably closer to 20,000 people. So about a tenth, a little less of the overall state out migration is coming out of Orange County. This is not a scenario that we really are looking forward to. This is not something that props up the real estate economy. This is not something that attracts employers. This is not something that make us feel good about new infrastructure projects to accommodate lots of new people coming in. We're looking at a place that is dropping in overall population. One of the things that we're going to be recommending as solutions as we start identifying things is the notion of maybe looking at this a little more regionally as opposed to just Orange County. Start working together with Riverside, San Bernardino County, see if we can't somehow create an incentive system for businesses to move jobs to those areas so that we can, as a region, continue to retain people and still have a nexus in Orange County.
Yeah, one thing we've been told by many people, particularly in the Inland Empire, is that jobs, historically a job would be, let's say here in Orange County, it would be too expensive. They want to do a production facility, they want to do some sort of customer support. In the past, they would go to Riverside, San Bernardino. Now they move to Texas, they move to Arizona. And then sometimes they say, well, why the hell am I here at all? And then the whole company goes. So this process is really beginning to have an effect even in the core counties.
And it's worth just talking for a second about the fact that there is just so much that we can do as a county and as a region. There are things that have to change at the state level in order to be able to make California a more attractive place. What you're seeing in the Orange County numbers is not unique. When you go to San Joaquin Valley and Central Valley, you start hearing the same things. When you hear Northern California, same things, where Silicon Valley and San Francisco area are becoming less attractive places and people are moving out from there too. So this is something that there are obviously a lot of local initiatives we can create, but it's something that requires state coordination. Next slide.
Yeah, I'd like to just get into this one, because one of the ideas is always, apologists for the current regime, if I could use that term, are saying, well, the people leaving California, they're a bunch of dummies and they're poor, and they're a bunch of, old codgers who are, we don't want them here anyway. But actually what we're seeing is the big decreases are in this 35 to 44 group, the 45 to 54, 55 to 60, 55 to 64. And so what that really is suggesting is people in their primes are leaving. We're not losing as badly among the millennial population, but as people get into their 30s, they want to buy a house, they want to raise a family. The combination of things, like particularly, let's say in a place like LA County where housing is expensive, it's crowded, and you have to send your kids to private school, all those things are driving this migration. So when you go to places like Dallas or Houston, Phoenix, what you're seeing is this generation is beginning to say, there's no way we can make it here. I can live here as a renter and have some fun, but when it really comes to my adulthood is elsewhere. That's a big problem.
Next slide. So the net is that we're becoming older. California is aging by 1.5 years more than any other state in the country. So that, doesn't sound like much. We're only 1.5 years older. But when you start looking at it on a large scale, that just means that we're skewing that way. And Orange County in particular is starting to look more like Palm Beach. So it's a retirement community in the making, but some good things about Palm Beach, don't get me wrong, but that is the way we're looking. Next slide.
But we don't have the good delis.
Right, that's right. So one of the things we found in our research, and by the way, Supervisor Bartlett, some of the things you were talking about with CEQA, just rang so true with what we're hearing. The underpinning a lot of the costs and the expensiveness of California and Orange County are actually the unintended consequences of environmental and energy policy. Next slide. This gives you a sense. Supervisor Bartlett said it takes between 7 and 10 years to be able to get a project through CEQA. When you add on top of CEQA all of the other regulatory issues, 15-year-long projects are not at all unheard of. Well, you know, put yourself in a position of trying to finance a project that's not going to even break ground for 15 years. That becomes, compared to going to Texas where you can get it expedited in 6 months, it doesn't make us very attractive. Just a little perspective for you about what the impact of CEQA is. Most of the CEQA actions, the lawsuits or the negative determinations that come out of CEQA hearings, are around residential development. That's where it's happening. It's not in other areas. It's 60% of them coming out of residential. So if we start looking at why is housing so expensive, you're looking at one of the reasons for it. Next slide. The net, by the way, of all of this is that we also happen to have the highest or the second highest electricity rates in the continental United States. Well, that's not something that's going to really help attract manufacturers or businesses to stay in the area. Next slide. What we're seeing is an exodus of companies. Not only have we seen an exodus of people, but 2,000 companies have left California since 2008 in the last 10 years.
And one of the things that I find most disturbing is we're losing a lot of the good long-term employers who would take that 35-year-old and pay them well enough that they could live here, they could have some sort of stability. So think about the companies that we've lost, Mitsubishi here, Toyota, Nissan, Parsons Engineering, Bechtel, McKesson, one company after another. And what's common about all the companies that are leaving, Occidental Petroleum, one of the things is they tend to be companies with large numbers of fairly high-paid middle managers. They're stable employers. That whole sector in California is just being
well, and
wiped out.
add to that, the people in this room. Many of you are in the professional services category. When the nexus of manufacturing companies and corporate headquarters leaves, so do you. The clients move elsewhere. And so the ripple effect of that is something that we're very concerned about. Next slide. The other element of all of this is whether or not we have the right approach to education to be able to provide the talent to companies to be able to keep them here. What we're finding is that only solutions that kind of fit the current politically correct public education structure are being considered. Everything else is being thrown away as not worthy of consideration. Next slide. This, which I'm sure you can read every element of that. This is all 50 states.
Well, look at the blue.
And the blue is standardized test scores in 4th grade for math testing. And I just chose that one at random. They're all like that. This is not an anomaly.
And remember, that California has, one of the reasons we moved from LA to Orange County is the public schools are considerably better. And, fortunately my daughter got into OSHA, so that was even better. But as you can see, we have a situation where we have some great school districts, particularly here in Orange County. But our education for the poor and minority population, which is pretty close to the majority of our young people, that population is getting some of the worst educational results that you see anywhere in the country. The worst test scores, for instance, for African Americans in the state of California is in the city of San Francisco. And part of it is our education system just isn't oriented towards skills. Now, in the report, we're going to talk about something, and there's an article about this in the New City Journal, but we spent quite a bit of time in Long Beach. That's one city that's trying to save its blue-collar economy. It's got tremendous cooperation between the companies there and the education system, starting at the high school level, to the community college level, to Cal State Long Beach. And I think that there are other models. And what I find disturbing is there seems to be very little concern with how the education system is going to prepare a young person for a job in the future. And as anybody who teaches knows, that's the #1 concern of the kids that are going to school today.
There are a few areas where we believe we should be focusing on the next generation. And so the next couple of slides are going to be areas where we can do that, where we can identify jobs and focus for Orange County as well as the state to be able to really boost our competitiveness and boost our ability of our people to transition into the next economy. All of the areas we're pointing out are ripe for public-private partnerships. This is not an area where public policy on its own is going to make a difference. What we're seeing in places where we're seeing growth is a very much of an engagement between private sector employers and public sector policymakers. So the first is, whether we like it or not, we're moving into the AI generation. IBM, Google, Facebook are revolutionizing these spaces, and these are all California companies, by the way. Hundreds of ventures are being developed around AI in Silicon Valley. Our VC and early stage incubation ability is very immature in Orange County. Something that people are frankly working on in the entrepreneurial economy here, but it's by no means where it needs to be yet. We have genetics, biochemistry, biomedical devices, which is a huge strength for Orange County, and fintech, all as areas that we should be nurturing and focusing on. The next phase of human development is going to be in there, in that particular area. So, what do we need to do to be able to make that transition? And B, how do we do it in ways that benefit Orange County? Are we too dependent on the Silicon Valley companies for the innovation? Is it too concentrated in Silicon Valley? Can we get a piece of that?
And one big problem of that concentration, of course, is very high costs. So what we're now seeing is other states and other regions are even now growing their tech economies more quickly. And if you look at the expansion plans of the Silicon Valley companies, most of them are not coming to Southern California. They're going to Texas, they're going to Arizona, they're going to Tennessee, North Carolina, because again, we've made the cost, tax, regulatory structure.
And when you look at the data, you see that those happen to be the areas that experience middle-class income growth and middle-class job growth. So the notion of building the tech economy goes hand in hand with building middle-class life. Next slide.
Yeah, so one of the things that's really interesting is I came to California in 1971. I wrote my first book in 1982, which talked about the development of California. What you see is this very dramatic change in the kind of companies. And McKesson, by the way, is now gone. Increasingly, our economy is really dominated predominantly by tech companies. We've lost the headquarters of the aerospace companies. We've lost the headquarters of the energy companies. We've lost a lot of the big service companies. We've lost a lot of the financial companies. What California had going for it historically has been this enormously diverse economy. So like, for instance, when the tech bust happened in 2000, okay, it hurt badly in Silicon Valley, but we had other industries to pick up the slack. If the tech people ever have and they will eventually, some sort of setback, we're going to be in big trouble.
Next slide. So what industries should we focus on? Next slide. When our report comes out, you will see that we kind of went at this with a specific methodology in mind. First, which is looking at where the demand for the jobs is going to be greatest, where the future growth is projected. And the second is, where do we have a strength already that we can build upon? And how do we then attune and align the education system around those industry segments? Next slide. So high tech offers Orange County and California its biggest opportunity, so we don't begrudge that at all, even though we're a little worried about the concentration. I think you can see that red circle over there on the far right, which means that we are both positioned as these are states. We're positioned better than almost everybody to be able to take advantage of the growth as well as have a nexus. So that's good. The next slide. The professional services area that services the entire economy, but of course, largely the growth is coming from the tech sector. We're doing pretty well too. We're at least in the upper right-hand corner. So we have growth and we have a nexus of expertise that we can use to apply that.
Although we are seeing a slowdown in that sector,
right.
Particularly outside of the Bay Area.
Well, as corporate headquarters move out of California, so do the professional services people. Next slide. Okay, so now let's talk about a couple of other industries. First of all, creative industries. We have 2.5 million people employed in the creative industries in the United States, and we have the most of them. Those numbers are not showing up on the chart the way they're supposed to, but we have about 450,000 people in the creative industries in California, more than any state. 18% of the industry is here. Next slide. So that's a good one to start with. You know, creative is part of the brand of California. And so I think it's important to keep tax incentives here to keep production going to the degree that the production is going to be people intensive as opposed to AI intensive. UCLA, USC, and of course Chapman, which beats both of them, are among the top tier of national educational institutions in the film and creative industries. We're going to see a slight erosion of employment from where we are today because of the incredible growth of AI, which gets rid of people in the process. But still, it'll be a robust employer. Next slide. There are two areas of manufacturing. One is the new space industry, and the other is what is known as advanced manufacturing. The new space industry is centered very heavily in Long Beach and northern Orange County, around where Boeing and its facilities, which are now closing, have been. This offers us a really interesting model for private-public partnerships, and the people in the city of Long Beach are jumping all over it, and we're doing absolutely nothing. Joel, next slide.
Yeah. All right, so basically in terms of, we know look, manufacturing is never going to play the same role it did historically, but our manufacturing is been growing much slower. There's been a bit of a resurgence in the whole country. This is going to be a big driver of higher wage, blue-collar employment. And again, what we really need to do is to focus on the fact that we can have an economy based completely around Google and Apple, and that they're going to take care of everything, because the reality is they're not going to employ most people. We have to have broad-based employment sources. And again, the key thing that we've learned is housing is a problem. High-wage job creation is a bigger problem. And the juxtaposition of the two of them together is very, very dangerous.
So the model that we're talking about that seems to be working is having employers sit down with both K through 12, community college, and four-year universities, talk about what their needs are, and then create curricula to be able to train students to be able to become adept in those industries, and then hire them. And then create apprentice programs, create mentoring programs, and internships to be able to make that happen. And so we're seeing that actually happen in Long Beach. I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that in Orange County. Next slide.
That's it.
That's it, okay.
All right, well, we just about made it.
So we have some time for a couple of questions. Have at it. By the way, our goal today was not to pass out razor blades and cyanide tablets. Our goal was simply to be able to, to give you the facts of what's really happening for the majority of people in the state and Orange County. Yes, question.
Well,
Can you comment on a couple things that Long Beach is doing to encourage the manufacturing of the job growth?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing, and again, the City Journal piece should be online in the next couple of weeks. It's already in print. What they're doing is they're bringing the employers to the schools, and the schools are going to the employers and saying, okay, I'll give you one there, and really very different levels. For instance, one of the big problems aerospace companies have is that the aerospace workforce, let's say the machinists, are getting old. And there aren't a lot of young people going into that field. So they're working at that level, then they're working at the technician level. Also that population is aging, and then also at the engineer level. So they're going at each level, and they're saying, oh, they're going to, let's say, the Port of Long Beach and say, okay, what type of jobs do you need filled? Can we train people for those jobs? And I think one of the reasons Long Beach is able to do it is it's a relatively small place. People know each other. It's pretty coherent. And frankly, it's been a blue-collar town for a long time. So I think it's a question of being open to a diversity of industries at different levels. The thing that worries me the most in California is this notion, well, we're only going to take the very top jobs. So if you went to Caltech and you got a PhD, you can find a good job. Well, the percentage of people who go to Caltech and get a PhD is obviously very small. So what I liked about Long Beach is they went all the way from the very high-end engineer all the way to the machinist, the assembler, and I thought it was the most encouraging thing I found in doing this work.
And also, it's not just education. They're focusing real estate development around an industry-specific core right near Long Beach Airport to be able to attract that group of people.
Yeah,
well, I mean, when it comes to focused real estate development, it's not like Orange County is clueless. We really know what we're doing in that area. So I see us being able to compete with that.
We have somebody back.
Yeah, question?
No, there was some back here.
Yeah.
Hi, this question is also for Lisa, so if she wants to contribute to the answer, that would be great also, because I didn't get a chance to ask her. LA County has put out a challenge to innovate around the homeless issue by using tech. I think it's a $1 million challenge, and I'm wondering, what is Orange County doing to encourage tech and innovation around the homeless issue? That's my first question. The second question, it's a two-part. There's also a lot of effort here to raise the exposure of Orange County's startup innovation tech ecosystem. And like you two discussed, that involves attracting talent. And talent needs a place to live, which is affordable housing. Usually that density enables affordable housing. So how do you reconcile that here in Orange County?
Well,
Lisa, do you want to take the lead on that, or we're happy to jump in? Come on up. We'll. There we go.
Okay, so relative to homelessness and technology, the two really do go hand in hand. So with our point-in-time count, we had 6,800 in Orange County. The point-in-time count was done through technology-based devices. So we have an accurate account, everything is real-time. We're creating a data integration system, working on the 2110C system, integrating everything together so that relative to homelessness, we're going to be able to utilize technology to keep track of where every homeless person is, if they've accessed services, if they've been to the ER, what their status on treatment is, and depending on your level of security. If you're a doctor, you're going to be able to access more information because of HIPAA. If you're just the worker on the street trying to get this person into permanent supportive housing, you're going to be able to find them, but you're not going to get access to all of that other medical information. So through technology, we're going to be able to have a much more comprehensive program. That's part of our system of care at the county that we're currently building out, and technology is a huge component of that.
Okay.
Good. Yeah, and just to give you a sense of hope, there are two positive things that I've noticed. First, I'm seeing a big interest in raising early stage venture capital funds here in Orange County that was not here earlier. We have Orange County investors are big investors in venture capital, people who have wealth, but they don't tend to invest in ventures here. They tend to invest in national funds. So the local community is working very hard to build a $100 million fund to bring some needed capital to the area. And the other thing that I think is important is the CEOs of technology companies are waking up to the fact that they're going to have a very difficult environment without talent. And so a new group has been formed called the CEO Leadership Alliance, run by some terrific people, well-funded, and it is coalescing the large company CEOs into taking action and creating strategies. So those are very hopeful things.
Let me just deal with the density issue. First of all, just you may not be aware, density is much more expensive to build. The more dense, a high-rise apartment is about 7.5 times more expensive per square foot to build. So what we find is those areas with the highest densities actually are also the most expensive. So but there are solutions to the problem. One of the things that we do not want to do, and this is what the state has been, many in the state are pushing, is let's go into single-family neighborhoods and densify them. Now, this is exactly what the state wants to do. They're already starting. What that means in the long run is those very last middle working class neighborhoods that people like in Orange County still give you a sense of what Orange County was once like, they get wiped out. And the terrible thing is we already have places zoned for high density, more than the demand will be. The second thing is that there's a huge opportunity which we're not taking advantage of, and that has somewhat to do with tax law, with the enormous amount of redundant retail space we're going to have. You drive along Tustin, 2/3 of those businesses really have no reason to exist. I mean, they're basically staying there out of some sort of inertia. We could develop lots of moderate density housing in these places. We wouldn't need new infrastructure. We wouldn't need to go into a single family neighborhood and change its character. But the reality is, the reason this is being pushed is there are real estate people who would love to build high density in, let's say, the city of Orange. Or they might want to build high density in parts of Orange County that are now middle class neighborhoods, because that would be a lot easier than having to go into areas which maybe need the development funds. So I think we have to be very careful that as we do add housing, that we don't destroy the very reason why people like to live here, which frankly, as somebody who's spent 40 years in Los Angeles, I saw that happen. And with a city that I really liked, by the time we left, I couldn't wait to get out of.
Let's thank Joel and Marshall.
Thank you.
Great job today. It's a little futile to try to keep the time today, but a couple quick things here. You have already heard about the fact that we're celebrating our 30th anniversary, and we're planning some incredible programs, and we hope you will join us. We are also beginning to put a process together to look for 30 visionaries to be recognized during our 30th anniversary year. So in the coming weeks, you're going to be seeing some information come your way to help us to nominate those visionaries. We hope you will continue to celebrate with us all year long. Thank you for being here today. Sorry we ran over a little bit. Have a great OC Day.